absolutely loved The Martian. Director Ridley Scott and writer Drew Goddard turned Andy Weir's book into a fantastic film. This is a movie that represents everything I love about movies. It's got gorgeous visuals, compelling, well-acted characters, all working together to deliver an unforgettable cinematic experience. It's light when it needs to be, heavy when it's appropriate, and its nearly 2.5-hour running time moves along at a steady rhythm. These days, I rarely find myself wishing a movie was longer, but in this case, I'd welcome more time spent with Mark Watney on the Red Planet. The score was subtle and worked perfectly to establish the desolate setting. The soundtrack, while being completely on the nose for a few choices, works wonderfully to add some much-needed levity. The Martian is a fantastic celebration of the best parts of the human spirit, our resourcefulness, our humor, and our ability to work together to pull off daring feats of greatness. It accomplishes this as a film by also being a celebration of the best parts of cinema. I wholeheartedly recommend this movie to everyone, whether they're a sci-fi fan or not. I had read Andy Weir's novel months before going in to see this movie. Doing so put me into the subsection of people seeing this movie while having full knowledge of the plot from the book. What are people really trying to communicate when they say, "Oh, the movie was fine, but the book was better"? What is it about books and movies that leads to this constant comparison? Movies and books are two very different mediums. Okay, that statement's obvious, but why do we insist on trying to compare and contrast the two? Would we ever try to say that a painting was better than a song, or that a poem was better than a video game? The issue usually stems from the fact that books and movies both often try to tell the same story. An author writes a book, people spend many hours reading it, this being their introduction to the story, and then they end up seeing the movie adaptation. They then judge their experience of the movie on their experience of the book. Books have a long time to tell a story, as long as the author likes. They were once constricted to a font that was large enough to be legible and a number of pages that could be physically bound in a single volume, but with the advent of ebooks and online publishing, there really is no limit. Movies, in comparison, technically could be made any length, but if you want your movie to be seen by anyone, you generally have to keep it under about 4 hours. Countless times I have seen fans of books claiming that, while the movie was okay, it would have been better as an HBO series. What this criticism really communicates is, the book contained more details and I spent more time reading it, so the story feels less complete without the details that were cut out in the adaptation. It says nothing about the actual movie that resulted. Now don't get me wrong, as a fan of books, I can empathize with this mindset. If a 2-hour movie was released that attempted to tell the complete A Song of Ice and Fire story, it would take immense willpower on my behalf to see it as a movie and disconnect it from the novels, or from the HBO show that I've been watching for about half a decade now. My goal here isn't to ask you, as a movie watcher, to completely ignore any comparisons toward the book. Instead, I ask you to just be very aware of their differences, and to avoid the knee-jerk reaction of, the book was better. Movies and books tell stories in a completely different way. Just as two authors could write the same basic plot and turn out either a masterpiece or trash depending on their writing ability, so could two directors. The specific wording and poetry of language gives authors unimaginable freedom to tell a story. Directors, meanwhile, have freedom to use and combine the entire spectrum of visible light and audible sound to tell a story. Due to the respective constraints of their mediums, each might excel in telling one particular type of story. The written word has time and freedom on their side. Exposition and world building, for example, key features of many sci-fi novels, are much harder to express in film. In a novel, you can have a character contemplate past or current events for pages at a time in a way that just might be awkward or impossible for a film-going audience to get through. The way we consume these different sorts of media also play a massive role in the way they're structured. Novels are typically written to be read chapter by chapter over the course of days or weeks. You can easily backtrack, reread paragraphs for clarification, or just for fun. The pace at which you finish a book is completely up to you. Films, on the other hand, are primarily designed to be watched in one continuous sitting. If you're watching a movie at home, you might have a luxury to be able to pause and rewind as you please, but generally movies are designed with the cinema screening in mind. This completely changes how information can be expressed. Exposition, for example, is a delicate problem filmmakers face. Too little and the plot can be confusing or feel inconsequential.
Somebody, I don't care who, tell me what is going on.
Too much and the audience will be bored. The most common, and in many ways the most juvenile form of film criticism, is to try to take apart the plot of a movie. It's easy to see why. The plot is the most accessible and easy to digest part of the film. This is true for literature as well. To produce a plot summary, no effort is required to access the actual craft of the piece. All that is really necessary is to remain aware of the events of a story. For literature, this craft comes in the form of word choice, pacing, dialogue, writing ability. For film, it involves the collaboration between the script writers, the actors, the cinematographer, and so on. Literally every part of a film or novel, which can be categorized under the broad label of the how it's put together, could be ignored if you just chose to focus on the plot. Due to time constraints, the plot of a book will almost always be much longer and detailed than the film adaptation, with a few notable exceptions. If more plot and more details is what you want, then obviously the book will be superior for you. A movie adaptation that was literally a visual, auditory translation of every written word of a novel would universally result in a mess of a film. Now, all of that said, there are still plenty of reasons why changes to a story in a film adaptation might negatively harm the movie. If someone points out a plot point that was actually better told or more successfully realized in a novel, then commenting about this is productive and interesting criticism. The place for comparisons between books and films should largely take place within communities already familiar with the source material. A forum for Harry Potter fans might have endless fun comparing and contrasting between the books and the films, but if a non-fan friend asked how the movie is, telling them that the book is better is a total evasion of the question. Instead, ask yourself, how was the movie as a movie? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed what we had to say, we'd appreciate if you liked the video or shared it with friends. In the comments, why don't you share your favorite and least favorite film adaptations, and subscribe for more.